Welcome to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm Dan Rowe, and I've masterminded the ascent of local favorites to global dominators. This isn't your usual get-to-know-you chat. We're diving deep. We're revealing the raw truths about franchise wealth building. With over 30 years in the trenches, I'm spilling it all. If you have an appetite for unfiltered tales and the hidden blueprints of franchise prosperity, buckle up. We're diving in. All right, welcome back to Smart Franchising with FranSmart, and today we're chatting with Steve Hockett, CEO of Great Clips, the largest hair care franchise company in the world, and the current chairman of the International Franchise Association. And perhaps his greatest accomplishment is being my neighbor in Scottsdale, Arizona. But Steve, thank you very much for joining us. Where are you today?
Dan, it's great to be here with you, and I appreciate the opportunity. And I'm in the Great Clips home office, south suburb of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Yes, I do have my flannel shirt on today because outside my window, there are snow flurries falling. It was 85 on Tuesday. This is a Thursday. It'll be a high of 36 with snow. So welcome to the Northwoods, Dan.
Well, yeah, I was going to say because I'm in Arizona and it'll be in the mid 80s and it's just different degrees of sunny and hot out here. But anyways, yeah, how about a little bit more about yourself and about your journey and how all this came to be?
Sure. My journey is interesting. I've been at Great Clips. I started as a franchisee 36 years ago. My wife, Deb, and I were a franchisee of Great Clips. We had salon number 150, and we have 4,450 salons right now in the Great Clips franchise system. We're 100% franchise, so all we do is franchising. So I started then. I was young, undercapitalized, over-leveraged, kind of normal. It didn't work out for us, but I loved the business. I loved the people, and I loved franchising. So a couple years later, after bugging Great Clips for just a huge extent, I joined the marketing department at Great Clips Inc. when there were maybe 400 salons. Back in 1993 and moved over to operations, moved to Ohio and started up a whole new region for Great Clips, came back heading up ops, moved, did a couple other things in franchising. Now I've been back 17 years and I'm an ops guy. I've been CEO for 7 years, almost 7 years now. And I love franchising and Great Clips is my heart and passion.
Why do you like franchising? What is it about franchising that you love?
Hey, it's a tremendous opportunity to build, to create. You know, I was a small town guy from South Dakota. I'm not sure I had an original idea, but franchising gave me an idea. I could take the system that Great Clips had, even though it was very young, 150 salons. I was 6 years old when I became a franchisee. And they were still figuring things out even 6 years later. But I could sense franchising was what I needed, what I liked. People can get in, use the system. They've got a peer group. They've got the franchisor that will help them out. Operating system. They've got manuals. You've got a brand. You've got things that you don't have to start on your own. And again, I'm not the idea guy. I'm an ops guy. And that's what I love about franchising. That's what I love today. It's a great vehicle for legacy businesses, particularly in Great Clips. I've seen people get in and create a tremendous wealth and resources for their hard work. I've seen people expand and become bigger than they are. I've seen people get into Great Clips and after a number of years say, you know what? I built a great business, but I'm going to move on to something else. And they've had economic sales and it's worked out for them. So you can tell my voice, Dan. I love franchising.
Well, good. I do too. Hey, so you got there was 150 locations when you got there. There's other hair care places. I mean, and none of them, there's only one biggest one, right? So like, what is it you guys think that you did differently to kind of own the space? Like, what do you guys do different, better, special than anyone else to have these results, do you think?
Well, from the Great Clips prism, and that's all I can look through. Our culture is exceptional, 100% franchised. Frankly, we had 20 company salons 20 years ago when I was at Great Clips. They reported to me. I wasn't very good at it. but I was very good at franchising. We got out of the company salon business and we'll never go back. So we're laser focused on franchising. We work closely together with our franchisees. The first two words of our vision statement are working together, and we practice that. We don't do anything without franchisee involvement. Without company salons, you can't test anything unless you have franchisees raise their hand and go, I want to help out. I want to be involved. And we have that. We have people lined up to test anything new that we want to do, particularly technology, which is kind of how we innovate around the core of Great Clips, because we basically just deliver haircuts. So that approach and how we franchise, we started out saying we're only going to go to markets when we're ready to go to a market. And if people would contact us and say, well, I'm over here in market F and I want to do Great Clips. And if we were only at C and we weren't to F yet, we would not take their money. So we developed by markets where we could support them, where we could be involved. And now we're in all 50 states. We're in every major market, city in the U.S. We're in 4 Canadian provinces. We still think we could double our size in the U.S. and Canada. It's going to take time. But, I mean, we aren't looking to go international beyond Canada because we think there's opportunity. And we want to maximize the opportunity in the brand here. That's also part of our culture. The other is one of our values is we are kind. It's kind of not a normal, usual business value. We've proven that being kind is a hell of a business strategy, and how we treat franchisees, how we treat each other, how we think about the customer. We are kind has been a wonderful business strategy for Great Clips. I think that differentiates us. Others could have the same. Those are a few things that have really helped us be successful, Dan.
So for somebody to learn, because you said culture, and sometimes culture is a buzzword. Obviously, for you, you went right to it as your differentiator. What could someone learn from you? Like, what is your culture? And like, if I asked like another employee on the leadership team the same question, like, what's the culture? What's important? What do you guys like? What is it?
Franchisee focus. We don't do anything. We don't make changes without franchisee involvement. We understand, doesn't mean we aren't leaders, and it doesn't mean we don't push. But our culture is success around a great brand with franchisees, with a great team internally. And we know who our customer is, and that customer is who sits in the chairs in our salons. Our customer is not the franchisee, although that's who our teammate is, but our customer is who sits in the chair of the salon. And so how we've built our brand, how we've defined the brand, how we talk about the brand is a big part of our culture too. And the franchisees understand it. All of my team members, the employees at Great Clips Inc. understand it. So there is good alignment. Yeah, doesn't mean we're perfect, but we're pretty darn good at what we do.
Yeah, and you said being kind to franchisees is a hell of a business strategy. What do you mean by that? I agree, but what do you mean by that?
Everybody deserves the opportunity when they join Great Clips to be successful. Everybody deserves the opportunity to be heard, to be treated with dignity and respect. If they're the most successful franchisee we have, or if they're a franchisee that doesn't like the business, they don't like hourly wage stylists, they don't like 7 days a week, they don't like retail, they don't like how we operate our franchise system. Everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And so if it works for them, that. If it doesn't work for them and they say it's time to move on, we treat them that way. We have high standards, but we love being kind. We have high expectations, but we understand, it's how you treat people is really what success is all about. And in a 100% franchise system, that's just been a wonderful platform for everything that we do.
If you treat a franchisee bad, that spreads like wildfire with the other franchisees, right?
It totally does. It's no different than anything in life. If, we are kind is also a way of how you treat people. And again, it doesn't mean you lower your standards or expectations, but it's how you communicate and how you answer questions and how we think being kind, here's an example. We don't change one word in our franchise agreement for anybody. Everybody signs the same franchise agreement. because we think it's being kind to have everybody on the same playing field. No one looks around and goes, who may have a better deal than I have? That's another derivative of being kind. Everybody gets treated exactly the same.
Yeah. Hey, what is the difference? Let's spend a little bit of time on this. You were a franchisee. What's the difference between successful franchisees and unsuccessful franchisees? And really, you said something a second ago too, where if you guys weren't ready to expand to a certain market, you wouldn't expand to a certain market. That's like that's one of those things when I come back and say, hey, any advice for franchisors? It's to say no more often.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, but going back to the franchisees, what's the difference between the most successful ones, the ones that come in, seem to have an easier go at it, the ones that can really start to compound and amass a really big business that sells for a bunch of money, versus the same people in the same system, the same opportunities who struggle?
Well, I was one of those that struggled and ultimately failed. And so I do have empathy for that. And I thought I could be a great franchisee. So if I could predict, Dan, I would not be here. I'd be somewhere else predicting franchisee success. But in Great Clips, and again, that's my prism, that's my crucible that I operate in. You need to come in and understand who your franchisor is and understand how they operate. In our business, you need to be a people person because we deliver haircuts, great haircuts. Well, they're delivered by stylists, great stylists who work behind the chair. So we're not like a restaurant that has great employees, but also has to put out, food product. It's our stylists create the haircuts. We touch every customer, with the hands of the stylist. So it's somewhat unique that way. So you got to be a people person. Got to understand our brand. You got to understand that we deliver haircuts. If you want to build the full service salon, that isn't for you. We know what it takes to be successful, and we'll share that with you. If you choose not to employ it, that would be your choice. But after 40 some years and how big we are, we've got a really good approach. And some people it doesn't click with them, but most people it does. And that's how we've been able to build this up. So I may not answer that exactly how you want it. It's really hard to pinpoint and say, here's 3 things. But we try and deliver a platform for franchisees. And if they can get into it, again, they're a people person and they like it, they can recruit and they're willing to work retail hours and we're open 7 days a week. That's a big part of it. That's a huge part of it. And that isn't for everybody. And I totally respect that, but that's who we are.
Yeah. I think with franchisees, there is a lot to it. And as I'm thinking about what you're saying, there's a lot to their sales process. If they've been sold wrong, like, hey, buy a Great Clips, it's a ATM machine. You just buy it and it makes money on its own. You don't have to do anything. You're never going to have issues finding staff or keeping staff, right? If you lie to them on the front end, then it's a big mistake.
Yeah. And I 100% agree with that. We're a manager run business. Out of 650 franchisees, if I could think of the names, I know almost all the franchisees by name, there's 50 or 75 that are hairstylists. So we're Steve and Dan is our average franchisee. Doesn't know how to cut hair, can run a business. If you're a people person, can work it. So you just can't come in and say it's going to be easy. It's manager run, but you got to get in. You got to be there on Saturday morning. You got to be there on Tuesday night. Friday nights, the Great Clips week, our reporting week runs Saturday to Friday. So you got to be there and close out the week on Fridays. The first year, I've told everybody this for the 30 some years I've been on the corporate side. The first year of a Great Clips franchisee is hard work. It's not a guarantee, but you look around and they can talk to very successful franchisees and they know what you can get to. But Dan, every one of our franchisees started with one salon. So we have a good track record, but yeah, it's hard work to be a franchisee, even at Great Clips. It's hard work.
Well, I'm glad you tell people. We do too, because, sometimes you see these brokers that are posting, things that they're out there trying to attract business, and they say stuff like passive, hands off, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's terrible advice. If there's no business that's an ATM machine, right? Except an ATM machine. But, like I'm surprised that we run into franchisees that don't want to work. Like they actually want to buy it and think that it's just going to be this money machine. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. Like you need to be very hands-on, especially the first year building it. Cause you're going to, I don't know, like you mentioned restaurants, mainly we do a lot of restaurants, you lose half your staff in 90 days and half of the other half are gone by the end of the year. So you got a lot of training and a lot of stuff to do to groove the right team so that later, I was a Five Guys franchisee. I never served one customer, right? But I was very hands-on in those stores all the time in the beginning, but making sure that the place ran right, making sure that my staff was doing everything that they're supposed to, but it's not a passive business.
Yeah, you got to be willing to roll up your sleeves. And we comment that to the franchisees. The working together means we got our sleeves rolled up together. But the franchisees, even if they're large franchisees, this is a business where you're engaged and involved. And yes, a larger franchisee will have a more defined structure, and there's managers, at every location, and that's the model. And they may have general managers, but they're going to be engaged and involved. And as they build from one to many, you're much more engaged and involved at the store level when you have one to a few than when you have dozens. But first year is hard. We tell them it's not easy.
You can get it to the point where it runs itself or the business runs itself, that you're less hands-on, but you're always sort of an active owner. You got to know what's going on in your business. And if you want to be, there's also, if you plan on being hands-off and you have a team that does everything, you better compensate your team well.
Sure. Another element for Great Clips, just why we're talking, that has been very helpful to us. Again, others can have the same focus, but over the years, we've had a very limited price board. We barely have changed that price board in the last 42 years that Great Clips has been around. We do haircuts. We have 2 tiers, one based on age, and for a younger cohort or a senior cohort, that's it. We don't do a lot else. We'll sell product. We don't do color, and we'll never do color. We don't take appointments, and we're not going to. So we know who we are, and we don't try and be who we aren't. And we don't chase something that we shouldn't be doing. And so that's been a hallmark. And I think that's been very helpful to our franchisees is you come in and we focus on the customer. We focus on delivering high quality haircuts. And that's what we do. We don't add a lot on. We don't complicate it. And a lot of times the mindset of how do you do more? How do you get more dollars per customer? Great Clips is the anti-retailer that way. We have built a model around more customers are better than more dollars per customer. And that type of discipline has served us very, very well.
Yeah. Over 4,000 locations. So, but that's it, is like you guys have a concept, you have a model on the franchise sales process. This is what we do. This is how we do it. We don't do anything else. This works. 4,000 plus locations. Only get in if you're willing to follow this playbook and not do coloring or not doing, appointments and all that other stuff. Are you guys may be so big that this doesn't come up, but I'm surprised. Like when I first started growing Five Guys, we had 100 locations. They were successful in all these other markets. People would come in and then they'd say, well, but let's add chicken. Let's add, it's like, wait a minute, it works. It's like, don't touch it. And so if you go look at the last Five Guys that was built compared to our group was one of the first franchisees, is like, I think they added milkshakes. That's it. Like, that's it, which goes with a burger, right? Burgers, fries, and shakes. Sure. But I'm surprised people buy a franchise and then they want to change it.
Yeah, we over the years have had those requests as have stayed true to who we are. Again, we know who we are and we know who we aren't, and we aren't chasing who we aren't. But as more time goes by, the franchisees understand that. But we have amazing franchisee engagement. We have an elected franchisee body, as franchise brands do. We have committees, we have task forces, we have hundreds of franchisees involved. And they've learned that we aren't going to, a way to grow Great Clips is not to add color. We just aren't going to do that. It will complicate things. That's not how we're set up. So we've also, the last decade, a dozen years, have said, sure, we can innovate around our core haircut. And we've done that with technology primarily and data, because we started collecting data almost 30 years ago. And so we have hundreds of millions of transactions and we know our customers. And so we're willing to innovate that way. Doesn't mean we don't keep moving forward, but we're not getting away from who we are as a business.
Yeah. Any advice for franchisors about saying no? Remember, we talked about that a second ago, but like no to the wrong territories. What about no to the wrong franchisee? Can you think of any good reason to bring in the wrong franchisee or the wrong market?
No, you don't want to bring in the wrong franchisee. You want them to go through your process. You want them to talk to other franchisees. You want them to make the decision. Again, it's very difficult to predict who's going to be the great franchisee or who's going to be one that the business doesn't fit. But if you help them do their due diligence and you stay to your process and they decide to join you and they're willing to roll up their sleeves, those type of individuals, those type of franchisees, I love, and let's go and let's figure this out together.
And then, but you guys said no. Like if a franchisee wanted to buy a territory you guys couldn't support, your answer was no. We're not.
Yeah, we'll call you when we open up that market. We open up by Nielsen DMAs. That's how we define our markets. And so when we open up that market, and the larger markets are always multi-franchisee markets, some of the really small ones, we may only have one, Dan, but when we open that market, we'll call you and we'd save their name in the file and open up. And we've had franchisees that would join us even 4 or 5 years later if they hadn't gone out and found something else. But a lot of times that means they move on, and we're okay with that. We've always been okay with that.
Yes. So you guys are growing it. You're as big as you are because you only grew in a way that you guys felt safe, controlled, smart, right? You didn't chance a lot of goofy stuff. And I have franchisors calling me every week. Maybe half of them aren't even profitable. They want a franchise. They want to start selling franchises today and their business isn't profitable. And they would take any franchisee anywhere in the country. And I'm like, you just don't know how bad you're going to create a situation for yourself.
Yeah. Anybody asks, did Great Clips start out just adding people in a undisciplined way? And it was like, no, we started in Minneapolis. And then by the time we opened Ohio and North Carolina, the Carolinas at the same time in about 1994, Great Clips was maybe in 11 markets, and then we started going after that. But we built a nice base, and then I moved to Columbus, Ohio, and my responsibility is how do we open up Ohio and Kentucky, and Indiana, and I was just starting in Michigan before I moved back to Minnesota. But I couldn't go over to Philadelphia. That wasn't what we were going to do. We were going to grow my area. The person in the Carolinas, Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham, the Piedmont Triad there, Winston-Salem, Greensboro. We did those, Greenville, Spartanburg. That person didn't run up and do, Richmond, Virginia, although we got to Richmond, Virginia, but we did it our way, and we did it methodically, slower than many others might have done, but it's proven to be very successful for us.
Well, and ironically, you guys are so huge by going slow.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it really isn't slow, but it was like being methodical and smart, try not to make mistakes. But yeah, I think the worst thing you could do is you shouldn't even be a franchisor in the first place. Some of these people that are calling us, but then they would sell anything to anybody, anywhere. And it's like, man, you're going to be in trouble. Hey, what is it about Minnesota? You guys are a franchise hotbed, restaurants and non-restaurant franchises, franchise times. What is it about Minnesota that's so franchise friendly?
It's pretty amazing. So there's just a great business community up here. I mean, again, it's end of October and it's snowing here. So a ton of companies have been started here. No company moves here to be their headquarters, but they've started here. It's a wonderful business community. It's very entrepreneurial that way. Whether you're Target, started by the Dayton family that had department stores. Your Best Buy started by one guy that had Sound of Music. It was Record Store. It becomes Best Buy, and I'm just two big brand names, but it's really cool. So franchising is the same way. The very first Great Clips salon was founded by two guys from the Twin Cities, right on the edge of the University of Minnesota campus. And they worked at a full service place and said, this no appointment walk in, this moderately priced, efficient quality haircuts, low wait times. This is the future. We got started right here. Regis, who has a number of brands and hair cares in the Minnesota. The Anytime Fitness guys, Snap Fitness, the 24-hour fitness is the real locus of that is here in the Twin Cities. I don't know what it is. It's kind of cool. It's a very vibrant franchise community built upon a very vibrant business community, and everything is homegrown here.
Must be something in the water.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just a dude from small town South Dakota, so a lot of us have come to the Twin Cities, the upper Midwest. And so it's just, I don't know. I can't explain it, but it is kind of fun to be here because it is very vibrant.
Yeah. Some advice I give people, anyone that's ever looking to buy a franchise of a chain, I always say, find the most successful franchisees in that chain and go emulate them. Do you think that that's good advice? Do you think that if I bought a Great Clips franchise, how open are your franchisees to sort of giving advice and mentoring new franchisees? And do you recommend that as a strategy?
Absolutely. We're incredibly open. If you come into Great Clips, we won't accept you as a franchisee unless we know you've talked to existing franchisees. You have to do that validation. And then we want franchisees that will embrace the system, which means they also come to meetings and events and they engage. We love it when franchisees connect. We don't have a formal mentor program, but we have the equivalent of mentor programs happening all the time through all of the meetings and events we do, through all of the interaction of franchisees. We're into legacy now after 40 some years. We have the next generation are heavily involved. We love that. We encourage franchisees to have family come in and transfer the business down to generations. There will be third generation. There will be fourth generation. And we're very excited about that. So again, comes back to that culture word a little bit that's sometimes hard to define. But we believe in franchising. We believe in legacy business. We believe in working hard, being innovative. We believe in a great peer group. And that's also why we've chosen not to go around the globe. We went to Canada, and right now, no plans to go anywhere else internationally because we want to focus on our opportunity in the U.S. and Canada. Everything's direct. We don't have any middle layer. We don't have development agents. We don't have master, licensees, things like that. Everything is 100% direct because we find that's also how we keep the culture going.
Well, Canada's like a suburb to the U.S. anyway, so it behaves pretty, other than Quebec. But so what you're saying is because you guys do what you do, you guys are creating generational wealth, not only for the stakeholders in the company, but the franchisees. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool thing that somebody's family lineage can have generational wealth with Great Clips.
Absolutely. And we have a whole program. We call it the Next Gen program. And it's not a very innovative name, but it's a great process. We encourage franchisees and we encourage the next gen of franchise. Most of them are their kids, but some franchisees are now saying, hey, my kids aren't interested in the business, but I've got a son or daughter of a great friend of mine who is, and I'm going to bring them in as my next gen in my succession planning. And so that to us is perfect next gen because they come in and they learn the business and the culture is transferred and how Great Clips franchise and how we interact with our franchisees. This generation understands. We think it's a wonderful way to keep the Great Clips franchise system very vibrant, very strong, and moving forward.
Yeah, one thing I think that's different about you guys, and it just occurred to me as you're describing this. So many people start companies to then flip them and sell them. They start a franchisor. I'm going to build it, and I'm going to flip it. You guys seem like a company that's built to last. And the mere fact that you guys are talking about next gen and trying to build generational wealth and everything sort of this. So I think that there's something to your longer term DNA, corporate DNA, and why you guys are as successful as you are, where other people might take shortcuts or make other decisions. But what do you think about that? You think there's a connection?
I do. That's intentional on our part to how we want to build and maintain the Great Clips franchise system. And, again, I've been around 36 years now, and I've seen 4,300 salons added since I was a franchisee. And so it is a special place. And we want it to be. At the same time, we're under no delusions. We got to work hard. There's competition, and anybody who wants to get a haircut and pay for it can go somewhere. They don't need to come to Great Clips. So we are focused on who we are. We're focused on our brand, our franchisees, but then we got to scrap it out. I mean, we got to be innovative, yet consistent. We need to have a great brand, yet we can't be chasing who we aren't. I mean, so we're big. I think we're well structured. It's still not easy, Dan. You know that.
Yeah.
It's not easy at all.
I know. But any advice? Because if you have 4,400 one-unit franchisees, your P&L looks one way, right? If you have, I think you said you have 4,400 locations with only 650 franchises, which is where the profit's at, right? The profit is in multi-unit franchisees. So, I mean, you just have leverage and scale when you have Five Guys. I mean, they have a lot of 100-unit think about $100 million franchisee sending royalties and fees to the franchisor. So I like big multi-unit franchisees. What do you guys do to keep bigger groups engaged, right? Because they're they could get fatigued. They could start looking at other things. They could have short-term syndrome. Any advice to keep them focused on keeping their edges sharp?
Yeah. What I'm going to tell you is we're very different. We love multi-unit. In our development policy, we describe the franchisee that we want. It's in the preamble that we're looking for individual owner-operators as franchisees who are multi-unit, who operate the salons largely in the communities where they live and work. We're not looking for the largest franchisees. We have, frankly, a limit. Nobody can have more than 2% of the system. So our largest franchisee is in the 80s, and they can't have 92 or 98. We love multi-unit franchisees, and by definition, we have average about 7 salons per franchisee. But we are built to serve, support, engage with, interact with multi-unit franchisees, but not huge, big ones. And they can only go into so many markets. In the larger markets, they can only have a certain percentage of the larger market, and they certainly can't have more than 2% of the system. So it's another way Great Clips franchises, but it's very different, and it's very intentional. And we have franchisees that are frustrated with it. I'll give some of the larger ones are going, well, I want to have 200 or 300 units. And we go, that's great. We know the reason they want that many is because they like how we franchise. So that's the conundrum, is they want to get bigger in Great Clips because they like and appreciate and embrace how we do things. But part of how we do things is to say you can't get that big. And that's just how we built ourselves over the years, is we want to have more franchisees generally than less.
Yeah, but you guys are getting it. You have your average franchisees are 7 units. That's fantastic. Those are people that are running those like a company, not buying themselves a job, which is really what a franchisor wants to get to. I'm also shocked when I meet people that want to become franchisors. They have little idea what they're going to do to support franchisees. They want to sell franchises. They want the franchise fees, but the very little dialogue about what the franchisees are actually going to get for their money and by way of support. Any sort of rules or any tips that you'd give somebody, like if you're going to take a franchisee's fees, you got to do a certain level of support. I mean, you got to help make those franchisees successful.
Absolutely. And it's not easy. I mean, when you're small and you have franchisees to support and you're trying to build the business, you got to be very careful. How do you How do you not outstrip your ability to serve and support the franchisees? How do you not give away all of your money either ahead of time in fees, or, you don't give away any of the equity? I mean, you got to be able to support your franchisees. So people that talk to me, franchisors, young ones, is you be disciplined. Doesn't mean you aren't going to take risks. It doesn't mean you're going to grow, but you got to be disciplined. I've grown up in a system where we've had the discipline, and it hadn't been easy. And the first 10 years, 15 years of Great Clips, we were barely profitable. We had to invest everything into the business, but we stayed stable, we stayed steady, we stayed true to who we are. And so I've seen it works, but it's you got to have perseverance, and you got to have durability in your thinking. And then you can be big like we are and go, wow, it's wonderful. And it's still tough. I mean, it's, being big isn't just a walk in the park either.
Yeah. You mentioned something about fees. Fees are sort of a necessary evil, but like with us, any of the FranSmart brands, FranSmart has capital. So if our brands ever need capital, we would give them capital. They don't need a franchise fee. So we never want them to make a bad decision because they need a franchise fee. Like, that's a terrible position for people to be in. And, I know a lot of the problems in franchising right now are coming from people who shouldn't be franchising, and they're selling deals because they need the cash.
Yeah. It's always funny as a consumer, you look around and you realize that just about anything can be franchised. I mean, but should everything be franchised? Should everybody be running a franchise? So as a prospective franchisee, you always say, you got to be comfortable. You got to validate. You got to verify. You're going to have to ultimately make the decision. Nobody will do it but you. But you do your due diligence. Take some time. A fast decision is not always better, but eventually you got to make one. I mean, you just can't do the paralysis move. But yeah, not everything should be franchised, and not everybody should be a franchisor. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were a franchisor, knowing what you know now, if you were in an emerging early stage brand, what are some of the most vital elements of support that you got to give your franchisee? I mean, first one, don't sell them a franchise if they're not the right person. So I know you said that it's hard to figure that out. I think that there's signs. Sometimes you ignore, like, emerging brands ignore the signs, but what other kind of, they got to find a site, they got to build a team, they have to have business systems, but like, what kind of things, if you were an emerging franchisor, would you insist were in your systems as fast as possible?
You got to engage with your franchisees and have a franchisee group, elected body like we have, a franchisee advisory board, whatever you want to call it, a formal group of input of franchisees, and then use them and get them involved and engaged. And as a franchisor, sometimes you have to make decisions, even if some franchisees aren't satisfied. But if you involve your franchisees and you've done your diligence with them, generally you're going to make some really good decisions, and you're going to have the support of the franchisees. That's certainly one thing. You got to have employees that join you that do have a passion for franchising. It was helpful for me to have been a franchisee, and it still is 30 some years later, but you don't have to. I mean, most of my team, we have a lot of them that have been franchisees, not of Great Clips, but elsewhere. That's helpful, but that's not a requirement. But you got to have people that have a passion for your brand and your franchisees. And you can start that when you're small. I mean, you got to have a way to help bring customers in. Your ad fund, if you have one, isn't going to do anything for the first 10, 15, 20 years. It would never be big enough. So you got to, what do you do at the local level? How do you have that customer generation figured out to help them so they can use the tools? You got to have your layers. You got to have your operating system. You have to have your program for your franchisees.
Yeah, part of your culture is collaborating with your franchisees and having a good relationship with your franchisees. I know a bunch of your franchisees, and even, a lot of people in the industry, they revere you. And I think it is because you're an operator, because you came up that path, right? You know what they're going through. But I know a lot of franchisors are intimidated at the idea that franchisees know too much. They're going to get too big. I don't want franchisees to have their own committees because they're going to start collaborating against us. And I don't agree with that. And I don't think you do either. But what's the argument for having an organized franchisee groups and committees? I think it's a good thing.
Oh, it is. We have one input group, formal input group at Great Clips. We call it our Marketing and Advisory Review Council. Other franchisors would call it their Franchisee Advisory Board. Ours is elected. Ours has been around for 30 some years. When I was a franchisee, it was just getting started. And we use that. I like having one formal input group, and we use our Mark Council as that group, and we run by them. If there, we call it a money and mandatory here at Great Clips. It was started by one of the original franchisees. If there's a decision that we're going to make and that we can make, even on our own, we could just force it. But if it's money, costs the franchisees money, or it's mandatory they do it, and many of them it could be both, we need to take in front of our Mark Council, our elected group, and if they support it, then we'll do it. If they don't support it, then we won't do it. And we've held true to that for years when we didn't need to. And that builds goodwill. There's some things to protect the brand, we're going to go make the decision. But we involve our franchisees at every turn, and we have committees and we have task forces, and we have more than we probably should, Dan, but it's a great way to franchise.
But it's also maybe that's why you're over 4,000 units, right? Like you get franchisors that want to be, it's like this illusion of control or illusion of lack of control. It doesn't exist. It's like if your goal is that all your franchisees are all on the same page, you got to look for ways to get them all on the same page. That's certainly one of them. An organized way, right? It's an organized way so that they're not all just sort of barking at you. Hey, let's shift gears a little bit. Franchising is a litigious business. A lot of lawsuits, a lot of lawyers. It's a litigious business. How do you guys keep your nose clean? Any advice to a new brand about just avoid that?
I would agree 100%. And I've mentioned to you before, and we're a large franchisor. We haven't had in our FDD a lawsuit with a franchisee. It's been reported for 17 years, 18 years. For the size we are, it's pretty amazing. We're very proud of that. And we're proud of it because of how we work with our franchisees. Again, not every franchisee that comes into Great Clips loves the business. Some come in and say, you know what, this isn't for me. I want to get out, or they stop doing what they should do just because they don't like the business. I always believe, my team believes, everybody deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. And if they want to get out, and if they choose to go out the door sideways, how do we help them go out the door upright? And that's just how we focus on things. It's a good way for us. We've been able to avoid litigation for Great Clips. We make hard decisions. Franchisees sometimes have to make hard decisions, but we've been very proud that we work with our franchisees, even if they're saying, I'm not a fan of who you are. We'll still work with you. Again, dignity and respect are the two words that we use as we resolve disputes with franchisees.
Yeah. Any advice to a franchisor? I mean, lawyers are going after some franchisors big time for doing some goofy things, and usually they're all avoidable.
Well, yeah. I mean, with how we do things is we try not to do goofy stuff. I mean, if you're focused on protecting your brand, you do have to uphold and have high expectations. And at the same time, how do you help people just move on? And many times that's all I want is just help me move on. And that could be we help find a buyer. That could be we work with a landlord to resolve a lease that they don't want to have with them. Well, we will do things to help the franchisee saying, I need to move on. And we may agree going, yeah, you do, but how can we help? Again, the metaphor to me is don't go out the door sideways, go out the doors walking tall for your relationship with Great Clips. And that's what we try and do.
Yeah, take the high road. Tell us about IFA. Tell someone, I'm a member of IFA. I think everyone should be a member of IFA, but you're the chairman. Tell people who don't know what it's about and why it's so important.
All right. Great question. I appreciate you bringing that up. It's been an honor to be the chair of the IFA this year. I at the convention in February, I move on. It's a 1-year chair. I've been involved for years. It's a true honor. I love franchising. Franchising is under attack at every turn, but franchising is very well led. The professional team at the IFA is outstanding. Matt Holler and Jennifer Brandine and Mike Lehman, and all the way down from the senior to all the people that work hard every day to help the IFA represent franchising. Dan, we are in a good spot. And again, it's not easy. There's forays being made, assaults on franchising at every turn. We all have to understand that. You're right. All you listeners out there, if you're not a member of the IFA and you're in franchising, whether you're a franchisor, franchisee, or supplier, we need to have you join. We need to make the franchising family bigger. We need to have everybody engaged with the IFA. The IFA is not just a franchisor organization. It's a franchisee organization and needs to be more of that. It's a supplier organization. You serve many of those roles, Dan. You're in all three of them, and I've been in all three in my career separately. IFA is a great entity. Now, it's multifaceted. At my size and with Great Clips, I love the advocacy because joint employer is a big deal when we're 100% franchised, but we want to give tools, robust tools and resources to the franchisees. So advocacy to me is what allows all of us to exist. But a younger franchisor or startup, you want education, you want the mentoring. IFA does all of that. You meet some of your best friends at the IFA convention, the IFA meetings, the meetings in franchising. And so the IFA serves all of us in franchising, from the very biggest, way bigger than Great Clips, to the startup. If you are embracing franchising and you want to grow your franchise business, you need to be a partner with the IFA. How's that for a commercial? I don't know. Does that work? But
I like it. It does. It's like a big brother who helps protect you and shares secrets of success, right? You have all the tools you need. You have, people that are involved in IFA. It just is easy to network and mentor with other successful people in franchising. And just like I'm doing with you, like you're sharing secrets because I'm asking them. But at the federal level and in many state levels, they're enacting new laws to protect people who've been screwed through franchising, right? There's a lot of people that shouldn't be in this business. There's a lot of franchises that were sold that shouldn't have been sold, and people that were promised. I mean, sadly, do you know the Burger Eam story? Like, that was heartbreaking, burger story. But yeah, and then I know Matt and the IFA is working really closely with them to also make sure that these laws aren't crazy. Like, we're trying to come up with the right balance of the right laws. But why don't you give some background about that? It all comes from just trying to do better, cleaner, more successful deals.
yes, absolutely. Start to finish. The FDD process, the franchise rule from decades ago, was put in place because of problems, abuses, how you want to describe it in franchising. That's still a good process today. How franchises are sold, that still needs to be a regulated part of the process. And I'm a guy that may say, don't give me too much regulation, but some smart regulation is good. And your name is FranSmart, so you like that. I mean, let's be smart about things. And the IFA wants that. But we don't want the FTC to start going out and looking and building their approach around some of the franchisees that didn't have a good experience. Let's look at the big whole and say, what's the right way to get information out on the front end so people can make good decisions. So I like how the IFA is approaching that. We call it that responsible franchising. But then if we're engaged and we're helping people grow in franchising and make good decisions because we're working together as a industry, as a concept, I think that's good too. So we don't want the government to regulate everything. How do we help each other? How do we provide good role models? I mean, that's what I'm sharing. Like you said, is it secrets or Great Clips? I think it's just how we operate. But we've been low key in franchising for years, and we've got some good stuff to share, and people could look at us and go, I could learn from that. And that's why I'm excited to be here with you today, just helping tell our story, which is a bit different. in the overall context of franchising is a wonderful opportunity, and the IFA is a wonderful trade association, franchisee, franchisor, and supplier.
Cool. Well, I appreciate this. It's no wonder everyone I ask about you seems to like you. You're one of the good ones.
Just trying, man. Just trying. I love franchising. It is so cool to see people come in, roll up their sleeves, work together with us, achieve success, build a legacy business, change their lives because of franchising, because of Great Clips. Dan, there's nothing more warms my heart than to see that. And I'm decades in with Great Clips, and I've watched it, and we got decades more to go. We will keep doing that.
Good. Well, thank you very much for your time, all this insight and wisdom. So it's very generous of you to give me an hour. I really appreciate this. So
My pleasure.
I hope to see you soon. When are you back in Arizona?
It'll be a couple weeks. I'll come down for a weekend. I'll look you up. We'll connect. Thanks,
look
Dan.
me up. Thank you guys very much. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will see you soon.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to Smart Franchising with FranSmart. I'm your host, Dan Rowe. If you enjoyed today's episode, this podcast is only going to get better. Please like, comment, and subscribe to hear more from the most successful franchisors and franchisees, and we'll see you next time.